Oh, thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guest is one of the great American songwriters. He's a man whose voice, whose story, whose image have become iconic, whether it's the fiddle behind Copperhead Road or Waylon giving Bubbles advice on The Wire. Steve Earle is a legend. He's now lending his legendary status to a hero of his own. His new tribute album, Guy, is a collection of songs by a songwriter's songwriter, Guy Clark. It's stripped down, beautiful, and exactly what you'd hope for from a Steve Earle album. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Earle, let's hear it. So in 2009, you released Towns, and this is your 2009, right? Sometime around there.
That's right. I think it's 15 years.
And now, 10 years later, you're coming out with Guy, and these are, you say, essentially the two songwriters that really inspired you to become a songwriter?
Well, I mean, I realized songs came from somewhere, you know, a long time before that, and there were other songwriters that inspired me that I heard on records. But you know, I got out and started playing in coffee houses pretty young, and if you do that in Texas, then you start hearing about Townes Van Zandt, and you heard about Guy Clark, and so at a relatively early age, by the time I was 17, my influences became people that I could sit in the same room with rather than people that I heard on records, and that's just a much stronger, more direct thing. Especially the kind of songwriting I do. You know, Bob Dylan invented this job, being a singer-songwriter as we know it today, and then took all of the air out of the room, and the rest of us have had to deal with that ever since, and it's hard. And it's just, you know, the idea of people covering my songs, and it's really cool. I love it when they do, and my ex-wives love it when they do because they make way more money than my records usually, but it's not like, but I don't write them for other people to do. Part of the Guy taught me, one of the things that he said was songs aren't finished till you play them for people. We were all taking money under false pretenses, my little group of people in Nashville that I hung out with. It was like a salon. There was something going on where the inmates were a little in charge of the asylum when I got there, and you know, that's what they call the outlaw thing was going on. Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, who had been country singers and in the traditional country music, figured out that rock artists had freedoms that they didn't have. And meanwhile, you know, as that's happening, you know, Chris Christopherson got there ahead of us, and he was the same thing we were. He was basically a folkie, but he was from Texas, and he grew up listening to a lot of country music, and we just, we all kind of showed up in town, and there were publishers at the time that knew that to help me make it through the night, the best way to do that was just let Chris Christopherson write The Silver-Tongued Devil and I, and that you would get copyrights. You'd get songs that would be recorded over and over and over again from those kind of writers. And it was a great time to learn, and I saw, you know, most of us, there was no place to play really out, so we sat around in rooms and tried to impress each other with our songs, and mostly trying to impress Susanna Clark, Guy's wife, because she was really pretty, but she also was, she was a really, really great painter, and she wrote songs herself, beautiful songs, and was more successful than we were on the country charts early on. And but she was the one that sort of, you know, Guy and Townes taught me how to write songs. Susanna taught all of us how to carry ourselves as artists, and you know, her bar was very, very high as to what was art and what was not, and so that was kind of what we aimed for. And I think it's a lot of us, me, Rodney, you know, so the other people that were around, some of them are here, some are gone now, but it was a great place to learn how to write songs.
You say carry yourselves as artists. Do you mean that in regards to taste, or do you mean that because you've talked about Guy as being someone who really taught you the discipline of what it takes to be an artist?
Well, it was about, it's not so much about taste, is maybe the wrong word. It's about aesthetics. You know, it's about the idea of there's a craft involved in anything that you do. They call these things that artists do disciplines for a reason. The difference between Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt's like the difference between Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac, and it's largely discipline. And I mean, working a lot more, working every day, and also living 20 years longer in both cases. Both, you know, Allen and Guy lived longer, and Townes and Kerouac died younger and didn't write very much the last decade or two of their lives. And you know, what you get is this record has 16 songs on it, and I could have recorded 16 more and probably still disappointed somebody. So I just decided to stick to the things I was most connected to and was most important. It's my Guy Clark record, so I just finally had to make that decision that I could only please myself.
I love all the songs on this album, but I particularly love The Randall Knife. I love Guy's version of it, and I love your version of it. And there's something so interesting about that song because it is so specifically about Guy's father in all of the
I almost didn't
details.
record it because of it. I just felt a little like I was intruding if I recorded that song. But I don't know what Guy would have thought about it. He might, I found myself. I recorded it, and I was glad I did, but I was also kind of in a weird way thankful that he wasn't there, so I didn't have to hear what he thought of my version on that one, just because it's a tough thing. Guy's relation. I never met Guy's father. I remember touring with Guy as a bass player, and his father became ill while we were in Houston, and we had a couple of days off, and he left me and the band and Susanna in Houston, and he went down to see his father in Rockport, and then we met him over in Austin, and I was put in charge of getting Susanna and the band over there. And when it came time to go over, I couldn't find Susanna. So I was 20. I turned 21 on that trip, but the last day of a 6-night stand at Castle Creek. So I don't know why he thought he needed to put me in charge because I was the youngest guy out there.
Well, I was curious, because it is such a specific song in the details about Guy's father. It still, for me, transcends that and becomes about my father in a weird way. And I'm wondering if you have that same experience as a father of yourself.
That's the job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. This job's about empathy. In like 1987. I was playing a benefit, and Johnny Cash was on it, and he came up to me and he said, I really love that song of yours, Little Rock and Roller, which is a song on my first album. And it's about me missing my kid, and it's about me being on the road and calling home, and talking to a child that's probably really too young to talk to me on the telephone. I made him a little older than he actually was at the time. And Cash said that to him. At the time, it was just a big deal to me that Johnny Cash knew anything about one of my songs. Then, like 3 or 4 nights later, I'm in a truck stop, and this truck driver walks up to me as I'm headed back to the bus, and he says, that song of yours, Little Rock and Roller, I really love that song. And a light went on, and it was that Johnny Cash and the truck driver, what they have in common is they travel for a living, and they miss their kids when they're gone, and that's what it's about. It's about what we have in common. It's not about, people don't care about you feeling sorry for yourself because you're riding around a bus that costs more than their house. They care about your experience as it relates to their experience. That's what this job is. So, and the Randall Knife is the same deal. For me to sing it does have to become about my father. Everybody, I don't think it's possible to have a relationship between a father and a son that when either one of them passes away, that before the other one, that there aren't regrets involved. I can't even imagine that. It's one of those things.
Your first demo was recorded, is this true, in Guy and Susanna's kitchen?
Yeah, it was. The house really only had 2 rooms, a bedroom and a big great room. It was actually a lake house. It wasn't designed for people to live in year-round. It was the kind of house people kept for the summertime out at Old Hickory Lake. And Guy and Susanna lived in it for years, and they finally moved into town when they got older. And they kept the house, and they rented it to Towns, and it's where Towns died. But that house was, I went out there to just hang out and eat dinner and make a tape because they had a 1/4-inch tape machine at home.
What year was this?
1975. And I got to town in November of 74. This was probably in January or February of 75. So, it's afternoon, we're making a tape. And, we talked a long time and we played some songs for each other. And then we finally got started, and we were kind of stoned, and we recorded a couple of things, and then we were hungry. And then, so Susanna started frying some bacon to make some BLTs. And then we come back to listen to the third song we recorded, and louder than anything else on the tape was the sound of frying bacon. And Guy listens to it for a second, he goes, cool, sounds like a Mickey Newberry record. Because Newberry was famous for having like oceans and stuff in the background on his records. So he just decided it was a sound effect. And we didn't change it. I took the tape around like that. And I told everybody it was something wrong with the tape recorder.
What did any of those songs in that early demo make it onto your first album or anything like that?
No. It would. There's a few songs I wrote that year. Listen, let me think. The Mercenary song might have been on that tape. And I finally recorded that song in 1995 after I got out of jail. I just wanted to make a record quickly, so I went back, and there were a few songs. When I made Guitar Town, it was 1986. I'd been in Nashville since '74, and I just wanted to make a record that didn't backtrack to any material, a record that was written to be an album, and everything hung together. Basically, I went to see Bruce Springsteen on the Born in the USA tour at MTSU, and I'd been kind of struggling. I had a record deal and then got dropped, and I thought I had another record deal in the works, but I wasn't sure. And a journalist friend of mine had 2 tickets, and his wife decided she didn't want to go. So he took me. He knew I was a big Bruce fan, so he took me out there. And Bruce came out, and he opened. I'd seen him a lot by that time. I saw every tour, but he came out and he opened with "Born in the USA," and then a light went off, and I went home and I wrote Guitar Town, and I wrote it specifically to be the song that opened the album and opened the show.
Well, that's so fascinating because, I mean, Born in the USA, while there's guitars in it eventually, it's not really that much of a guitar-heavy Springsteen song. It doesn't lean on that at all. What it leans on is like a kind of showmanship in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of guitar on that because there's really not much. There's that synth, and the rest of it's guitar, and it's all Bruce, So, most of the guitars on Bruce Springsteen records are Bruce, and he's a great guitar player. But yeah, it was different. There were a couple of things on that record, and of course, Dancing in the Dark Side. That's still, there's a lot of revisionist kind of things of looking back on Bruce Springsteen records. And I love The River, and I love Nebraska. It's a personal favorite of mine, and I play probably more songs from that than I have any other record. But you know what? Born in the USA is Born in the USA, and it was the biggest record he'd ever had for a reason. Those things happen for a reason.
Do not misunderstand me. Born in the USA is amazing. It's an incredible.
A very, very big deal for me.
So what made you decide to tackle these Guy Clark songs? When did you have that moment where you were like, let's do a tribute album for Guy?
Well, I made the Towns record, and it was like Guy was sick for a long time, so I probably entertained it before, but I sort of pushed it to the back of my mind. But when he actually passed away, I knew I had to make this record because I do not want to run into Guy Clark on the other side having made the Towns record and not made his. I'm not even sure I believe in that, but I mean, I believe
in case.
Yeah, I believe in God, but I'm not sure I believe in, I don't know if I took real lysergic acid diethylmide 25 that doesn't believe in God, but I just, I didn't want to take a chance when it comes to that encounter with a guy. He could be pretty grumpy. So I knew I had to make it. As far as making it now, I have another record that I've already started writing, some of the songs of which will be in a piece that's going to go up at the Public Theater in 2020. That's Jessica Blank and Eric Jensen are writing it. I've written the songs for it. I'm actually going to perform in it. That's about Upper Big Branch, this coal mine that blew up in West Virginia like 9 years ago, something like that. And that was that guy, Don Blankenship, that you saw that couldn't put a sentence together that was running for the Senate in West Virginia. Thank God he didn't get elected.
To call a real asshole.
But he was next to asshole in the dictionary. And he that was his mind. He ran it outlaw from day one. He just considered the fines that he paid for operating illegally and operating unsafely as part of his costs. And he finally killed everybody in the mine. So the core of the songs that I've written so far are about that, because I putting the Guy record out now means that other record can go up in 2020, and it's the record I want to make. I've made the record that preaches to the choir. I've done it twice, and I have no apologies about that. And my politics have not changed. If anything, I'm more radical than I've ever been, especially this week. But I don't. I want to make a record that speaks to people that didn't vote the way that I did, and maybe that didn't have to be that way, and people that don't have to vote, against me this time. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It's about, there are people that are intentionally playing on the divisions between us, and they're getting rich doing it, and they're paying less and less taxes and putting more of the weight on everybody else all the time, and it's not an accident. And if it's not an accident, it's a conspiracy, the way that I look at it, and there's nothing that we can do about it except for try to do something different than the way that we do it. So that's the record I want to make. I want to make a record that actually changes hearts and minds, because I grew up when I grew up, and I really believe that music can do that.
How do you do that in this landscape when it feels like, and I don't mean to generalize, but I always think about this when I think of someone like you and your music and, quote unquote, outlaw country. And it's the kind of country music that has integrity, that is actually representative of the form and how to do it and where all of this came from, when so much of what is listened to in regards to country music is what is called pop country. And it's kind of shoveling this patriotism and all of these ideas into people. How do you break through on that?
Well, I think, you're lumping a lot of things together. Don't
True.
necessarily go together. For one thing, when Guitar Town was the #1 country album, I was still playing dance halls every once in a while, country places, and somebody would dance past the stage and say, "Play something country." And I stopped in the middle of a show one night, and I said, "You know what? I have the #1 country album in the Billboard charts this week. I decide what's country this week." And I would not try to tell any of these kids in Nashville that are making records now that what they're doing is not country. That's just ridiculous. Nobody gets to decide. Look, I know what I do is archaic to a certain extent. I'm kind of a Civil War reenactor, but it's not, I'm okay with that, and I have an audience that's okay with it. But there's the best music being made in Nashville today is being made by women, and they're not getting on the radio that they should. That's an issue. That pisses me off. Miranda Lambert's last record was a masterpiece, a really, really, truly great record. So I don't. I love Chris Stapleton. Kind of hard not to love Chris Stapleton.
Sturgill?
Huh?
Sturgill?
Oh yeah, Sturgill's great. Sturgill, worries about it all a little bit too much, but he makes great records. It's just I get it. Don't my advice is don't read the press, man. Don't read it. I don't read it anymore. It's
You don't read the press. You don't read the press at all.
Not since I got sober. It was just one of the things that I decided that I needed to do. It's just don't. One of the maxims of this sort of secret society that I belong to that's kept me alive for 24 years is that your opinion of me, is none of my fucking business. Yeah. And it really, don't Google yourself. It's not healthy. It's one of those things. I haven't read a review in a long time.
So you're going to be playing a couple songs for us when I step off the stage. Can I ask what songs are you going to be playing? Do you know?
It's all stuff from the Guy record.
Yeah.
They're all Guy Clark songs. We're going to do 5 songs. But I'll leave a little surprise in it. But, it's like he was a really, really great writer. This is cheating. It's a record made up of 16 songs from the life's work of one of the best songwriters that ever walked on this planet. So it's kind of not fair.
That you get to do, that you get to play?
Well, that you can make a record and put them all on one record and that I get any credit for it whatsoever.
Did you have any rules going into recording this record? Because one of the things that
No overdubs because there was no time. We recorded
Right.
16 songs in 5 days. My band's still pissed off about it. Guitar players and fiddle players, they want to do everything over, and I don't believe in a lot of that. And there's no vocals. You haven't heard a vocal that was re-sung on one of my records in 25 years. I just don't do it anymore unless I'm sick. And have to do something. Like I did a record in May once that, I don't really have hay fever, but I have some COPD because I quit smoking about 10 years too late. So when everybody else is having trouble with hay fever, my chest tends to close up, and I have to that affects my voice. My voice is more chest voice than you think it is, and it's it closes. I have trouble hitting notes when my chest closes up. So that one record, I made it in May in Nashville. Tennessee means Valley of the Fever, and that's all the native folks around there knew. And they didn't live there. They used it as a hunting preserve, but they didn't go there in the spring and the summer, and they didn't live there because they just knew it made them sick when they went there. So, of course, white people came and ignored that. It's like Denver. Kit Carson met a Ute hunting party. They were hunting buffalo where Denver is today, and they traded a bunch of stuff, and the last thing they said to him was, "Don't camp here, the smoke stays." And they didn't pay any attention to it, and Denver has some of the worst air quality of any place I've ever been to be as beautiful as it is.
Steve, I have to let you go. This is my time with you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm such a fan. The album's called Guy. I think it comes out, when does it come out?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Steve Earle, everybody. Steve Earle.